This Daf Yom Yerushalmi, Meseches Terumos, in the article holds by edition. We are on Daf Chotam and Alf, the second line down, Tam and Tzninon, and that is in the Vilna on the seventh line down on Yud Gimel base. And yes, it was a very heavy day in Klal Yisrael. 24 soldiers lost their lives. In Gaza, we should be Zoyga to Yeshua's and Chamas Schus on Yerushalmi. Tam and Taninan, we learned over there in Menachos. Amro, they said to Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir holds that the sourdough which you ferment, the dough on Shavuos for Shtei Lechem, comes from within the Asiri Sa'efa, the Yisron which you took, and you generate the sourdough from the flour which was designated for the mincha. So they said to him, no, that's not going to work. Then it's going to come out too much or too little, right? Because depends how much water you used in making the sourdough. If you make you can't make sourdough or plain flour. You have to add water to it in order to ferment the sourdough, in order to ferment the mixture. So if you put in too much water, so then you're going to have more than a shear of we're going to have more than a shear of an isaron, but so therefore what's going to happen is that you're going to have to take off from the isaron itself, of the solus, of the flour. So it's going to be less flour. If you're going to have very little water with which you make the sourdough, so then you're going to have more solus, more flour. And you're going to have more more flour than the proper measure which you're supposed to have. Okay, so therefore they said you bring the soron makamacher, included in the soron, but it has to that way you'll know proportionally how much it's supposed to be. So when you do minei ubei, it changes the proportions, changes ratios. If you bring them elsewhere, you can preserve the ratios. Okay, so Man Amrulo, who is the Amrulo? Rabbi Meir. In other words, who they say the Amrulo to? They said it to Rabbi Meir. Just check that out. Yeah. So, Man Amrulo Meir. So, Pamim Shas Oriafeb Utavuach. And the Gemara explains. Sometimes, what was their taina? Taina is that sometimes the sore is superior, and it bloats, and the saron is going to, you're going to have to take away some of the flour, or you're going to have more than the saron. So less, it's a tzmuka, because if you left it so less, there would be less. Now that the sore is good, nice, it's bloated, so you see the tapuach as if it is shriveled, and you just look at the soles venires chasera, and you see it's chaser, that some of the soles is missing from the sore. Sometimes the sore is bad, butzamek, and it's shriveled. But soles to be greater, more volume. Now that it is the sourdough is bad and it's shriveled, so you look at the tzamek, this thing as if it's tafuach. Look at its first volume before it became shriveled up. Benim says Venir es Yisera, and there is going to be more than the saron in the midah. I guess when it's shriveled up to less than the size of solus, and if it didn't shrivel up, it bloats to more than the size of the solus, as it was by solus. So now we're going to get back to Machlokes from yesterday. And here I wrote on the side of my Kavanoki, Koza Megum Gum Tuva. Everything here is unclear. Mechuvar Kagra. The best way to understand is like the Gra. And I said here, Ayin Bar Lamed Hey. So we'll look at the Gra. The Gra says, very simply, changing the gear so you're completely. He says, he puts all the Amoraim Tanoim which go after Basar Hashta. In other words, what when we had Kazayas yesterday, which shriveled or which grew. So there's some Amoraim Tanoim go after now, what size is now, and some Amoraim Tanoim go after was initially. So he said his gear says Rabbi Yochanan Shlakish kind of Kamadrai Meir Roshin Gamliel Amru Davar Echad. They all say that we go after what it is now. And well, we'll come back a second. And he takes out the word shloshton, and in the second bava, his says right mayor to Ramoy, Rabbi Yossi shlosh amru davar echad. Here the three say the one thing, be a seira. In other words, you go after what it was originally. So according to going back to the Mishnah over there, so Rabbi Meir, who says you have to buy this from mitoicha, holds you can't can't add or from elsewhere. Sorry, Rabbi Meir says that you have to go mitoicha. Says that holds that you go after meikara. It doesn't matter what happened in the end. You go after meikara. Meikara was a sorrow. Now the fact that it changed doesn't matter. It's still Yisrael. Whereas the Chachamim hold no. The Chachamim hold you go after after Hashla, and therefore they say, look it, if you're going to take it from it itself, so then depending on whether the sore is higher volume, lower volume, you can have more in Yisrael or less in Yisrael. And we go after Hashla, and Hashla is going to be a problem. But according to Meir, since it goes beside Meikar, it doesn't matter what happened afterwards, where the sore went was too bloated or too shriveled. You start with Yisar, that's good enough. Okay, so again, Rabban Argan him hold you go after Hashta, and if it's beside Hashta, if you're not going to take sore from elsewhere and use that, so then you're going to have a mess with your Isaron. In terms of using that sore from elsewhere. It's important to remember that Rashi says there in Menachos, El maybe Sor, you bring the Tocha Mida, you bring Sor and put it into the Mida, and then you put the Solas on top of it. Okay? You bring the Sor Mechumetz with the Offer Toch Beso, and also Toch Sor, most Mali Solas. Okay, so and then you could go Basar Hashta, and it'll be, since the Rosario was already in there, it'll be the precise amount that you need to have. Supposedly, but the Somatocha in the end, it's going to make a problem. In the beginning, it's not. Okay, that Girsa is very, very simple, works out well. Let's go on. Elin de Bay Bar Pati, Pashtun Ores. The people of the house of Barapati, they cooked rice. In Shumatakna, they forgot to take of Chumas and Mises. You say it. Chavraya Sami Meimar. Asim Chal Gavin Kaba Muvusho. Take from raw rice, Chumas and Mises, corresponding to the cooked rice. Amalei said, Afra, Amalei said, no, he said, no, of Ana Amar Cain. He said that I also say this as well. Lama, this shedarko litpoach. What do you mean? Rabbi Yossi before had said that when you take tame and grogos, you have to go according to the meter now. According to the meter now, so there's a difference between the raw rice, which is so to speak shriveled, and the cooked rice, which is so to speak bloated, right? So how does this work over here? So he says the dark lipach means nobody eats rice raw. So therefore, you take proportionally from the dry rice, but everyone would take from the bloated rice, and that's okay. It works out fine, because so it's always, since it's going to be cooked, so therefore it's going to become the proper measure. I'm not sure I understand exactly what I just said, to be honest with you. So I'm going to go over it again. And I see there might be a difference in Girsa between what we have in the article in regular Gemara and what we have in the Kavanaki, but I'm not sure about that. Let's check that before I commit myself to that. Uh, no, it's the same thing. Okay, so again, Elin Bay Bar Pati, Bishlam Doris, they cook rice. Inchim Matakan, you say, they forgot to fix it. The Chumatsum rice. So you take a raw rice corresponding to the to cook rice. Um, Now, this is, you go according to the measure that it was before the rice was cooked. It becomes proportionally correct, right? Because you figure out, okay, how much, what is this rice, value rice before it's cooked? I have this other rice, right, which is uncooked. So I go after the proportion of the uncooked rice on the rice as it was before it was cooked. Okay, so Rabbi Yossi, this is according to Rabbi Yossi, this is a problem, because Rabbi said you have to when you take off gro, grogros on ta'anim, dried figs on moist figs, that you have to take off a saw of grogros on uh, no, the other way around. That you have to take a saw of grogros of dried figs, a 9 cm of moist figs. Um, Even though the eventually, in the end, that's not going to be proportional, because the one saw of grogros was going to turn out to be way more when you shrivel the new figs. So here by rice, he says no. Here you can take from the raw rice, and the reason is that um, the which means, I should say, that a 9 saw of, hypothetically, a 9 saw of cooked rice only have to take as a half a saw of raw rice, because the rice bloats to twice its size by cooking. Why is that? So now he says, because lama should darko litpach, because nobody eats rice raw. It's not like tainim where and grogros, where some tainim will remain tainim and not become grogros. Here, all raw rice becomes cooked rice. So therefore, you go after the measure that this can produce if it's cooked. So therefore, even though it's only half a saw, since when if it's cooked, it becomes a full saw. So therefore, you can take half a saw of rice, uncooked, on 9 saw of cooked rice. Again, because it's always going to be cooked in the end. Okay, fine. Let's go on to the next Mishnah. Tormin Zaysi Shemen, you could take truma from oil olives, which are superior. I'll say kevish on olives which you leave around, um, you and pickle them, um, which are they are last longer, but they're not as good. So you do sheis shemen as zeis kevesh, but not zeis kevesh as zeis shemen, because evidently you're causing coin or loss by doing so. Um, before we go on, I want to read you the Rambam Ma'aser Korbanos Tes Yud Ches in the previous Gemara. It says, "V'keitzim chamson lachmei toda." How when you have lachmei toda, it's the same thing as the shnei halechem and shvuos. You may be sorry k'dei chamson. You bring sourdough enough to ferment it. V'noso tochamida. You put it into the meat up first. Malis meat, and then you fill up the sword. Alpi shesov lios chasei yosera. Even though eventually it's going to be more or less. B'imnei hasorb, and account of the sourdough. Shmami of kasha, sometimes will be thick and hard. Plenty of rakos, and them soft. Aim mashkichin elami dosa atah. You go after what it is now. And you're going to measure a complete isaron. So therefore, you go after what it is right now. Okay, so going further again in the Mishnah. Zakah, the general principle. Koshu kilayim b'chavero, anything which is kilayim on another thing, lo yichom izelzeh. You can't do shum from the other. I feel you have a ra, even from the good and the bad. Koshu any kilayim b'chavero, anything which is not kilayim with the other one, torem, amir ra yafa. Term yafa ra, you go by the take truma from the good on the bad. I know you offer, but not from the bad on the good. You tell me, if you didn't, but you haven't, truma or truma. Truma is valid truma. The only case where it's not true is when you take truma from zunin on wheat, and zunin is evidently even though it's not kilayim with each other because they're both forms of wheat, she'eno ochel. It's not considered to be human food, the zunin, and so therefore it's ineffective. Vakishos, squash, malafafone, cucumber, min echon. They're one min. You don't matter. Shnei min already says they're two minim, and the same machlokas applies. It's to be found in Mesechus Kilayim. Mora says, Rabbi Yochanan said, that which it says, they always take from the Yofeh, Zeise Shemen on Zeise Kevesh, that is the Rabbi Yehudi. Rabbi Yehuda he says that you always take from the Yafeh, even places no Kohen. Because Kohen Chacham, in places no Kohen, take from Miskayim. As they say, Kevesh on Miskayim, lay it longer, they're pickled. So Rabbi Yehuda you always take from the Yafeh over the Miskayim. But Rabbi Yochanan said, Mechalfa Shita said Rabbi Yehuda. We have a switch in the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, because according to our Mishnah, seems that he holds that cooked wine is worse than non-cooked wine, and in the Mishnah later on, beginning for the 11 paragraphs, things like the opposite. It says Tanakh says that you can't cook wine from truma because it diminishes it, but the time of Rabbi Yehuda matir, and Rabbi Yehuda, however, says it's principle nation mashbicho. Cooking makes it better. But it's not a contradiction. You don't have to say that this is something switched. Taman b'kohen. There, it's a kohen who is allowed to cook it. If he wants to cook wine, he's allowed to do it for his own purposes. Kamba bailim. They can't cook it, the wine, because be'etzem, non-cooked wine is better. So therefore, they can't cook it. Once kohen gets it, he can do it anywhere he wants, and therefore he can even cook it for his own purposes. Okay, we'll stop here for today.